Hello gamers, Shah here, and today we are going to be talking about the Dragonflight talents for Guardian Druid. While a ton of players have already given their opinion and takes on the talent tree, I haven't yet. I wanted to spend a little more time trying to predict what the meta choice might be for Guardian Druid in 10.0. I think that it can be agreed upon that the talent trees are widely accepted as a pro for Dragonflight. While they are great from a first glance, there are some issues that I have and that have cropped up, and while I doubt anyone from Blizzard will actually watch this video, I hope that once alpha and beta testing is released, that Blizzard is extremely open to the feedback and spends a fair bit of time balancing and tuning some of the talents and abilities. Really quickly, if you enjoyed today's video, consider becoming a little more intimate with that like button. You know you want to. I post about 3 to 4 times a week about anything Tank or Mythic Plus related, so if that interests you, hit that subscribe button, it's right there. And it's completely free. I also stream on Twitch if you like flannel shirts and backwards hats. Alright, let's dive in. With Dragonflight, Blizzard is completely reworking the talent tree system. Players from the pre-Mists of Pandaria days will feel some major nostalgia when glancing at these. Instead of bracket tiers for talent choices which are unlocked every few levels, and arguably extremely cookie cutter for some classes, these new talent trees should give a fresh look and build opportunities for each spec. So far we have only seen Druid and Death Knight, but overall have had some pretty good reaction from the community. In patch 10.0, players will earn a talent point every level, alternating between class and spec trees, which they can then spend to unlock abilities or upgrade abilities. As of now, and I can't stress this enough, we will have 31 baseline talent points and 30 talent points for our specific spec. Everything I talk about in this video is subject to change. The talent trees are divided into 3 sections and will require the player to spend a specific amount of points in the top section before able to proceed. In order to move on to section 2, you will need to spend 8 points in the first section. Then to access the more powerful section 3, you will need to spend 20 points in that tree up to that point. I have a few issues with this, but we're going to talk about that later. While they appear like they have a ton of flexibility, more than likely there will be some cookie cutter build talents for a lot of specs. Speaking of cookie cutter builds, let's see what we can figure out for Mythic Plus specifically. This one is the more hyped build for Guardian Druid. It's a meme that Blizzard keeps pushing deeper down our throats with each expansion ever since Legion. For those who aren't aware, there was a time where Guardian Druids actually ran a certain set of talents and balanced Druid legendaries in different types of content. The community started calling this Galactic Guardian, and ever since BFA we've seen this as a talent choice on our talent page. Going into 10.0, it appears Blizzard is really pushing for an arcane magic type tank, which is really interesting. Let's see how this is going to work. In order to get access to the second section of our talent tree, which is where most of these talents are going to be residing, we need to spend 8 points like mentioned before. Unless tuning drastically changes, this is how we're going to spend our first 8 points. Maul, Gore, Survival Instincts followed by Improved Bear Form, Bramble seems to be the more popular choice, Improved Mangle, Berserk Ravage, and then Innate Resolve. Once we socket these talents, we will unlock the second part of the tree, and this is where the Galactic Guardian build is really going to take shape. Branching off of Innate Resolve, we will choose Scintillating Moonlight, which gives us a pretty solid 4% damage reduction on the enemies that have Moonfire applied to them. We will then need to spend 2 points here to unlock the lower branch. Twin Moonfire followed by Galactic Guardian will be the next 2 choices. This will cause Moonfire to trigger on a nearby target and damaging abilities to trigger a buff that amplifies our Moonfire by 300% and generates 8 rage. In most scenarios, this is going to replace your Mangle. Next, we want to try to modify this arcane damage as much as we can, so we will need to spend 2 points in the Fury of Nature talent choice. This now has us at 14 points spent, which means we need another 6 points before we can move on to the last part of our tree. Since damaging abilities will proc Galactic Guardian buff, we can actually improve our proc rate by talenting 2 points into Positive Outlook.
I love bear puns, man. Thank you, Blizzard, so much for this.
At this point, we want to start bolstering our survivability. We want to snag Earth Warden for auto attack reductions, and then let's turn our attention back to grabbing the improved survival instincts for that additional charge back in the top section of the tree. Alright, so now we need to spend 2 more points to access the last section. I think that any type of Berserk is going to be worth taking. Berserk and Incarnation have always been a staple of the Guardian Druid. So Berserk Persistence it is. Following this, we're going to take Tooth and Claw. This is going to be our 19th point spent. While Maul isn't that effective, the auto attack procs will cause Maul to maybe be worth hitting. Maybe. With 20 points spent, we now have access to our talent, Elun's Favored. This talent is going to be what all Galactic Bears will be chasing. It will cause our Moonfire and other arcane damaging abilities to deal 30% more damage, and we will be healed for 30% of all the arcane damage that we deal. I'm really praying for a cool trinket that does arcane damage that will be amplified by this talent. That would be so dope. I doubt it, but again, that would be so cool. After this, we're then going to grab Circle of Life and Death. This Shadowlands legendary didn't see much play in the Guardian Druid community, but having access to it in this tree will have a ton of synergy with the Galactic Guardian talent, since we will now be doing damage faster, which means more procs per minute. Obviously, we can't test this now, or at least at the time of recording this video, but I'm really praying that this offers a super fast paced playstyle and a good feedback loop. Now for the rest of the tree, we have 8 points to spend. There are some great talents we might be missing out on, but for the sake of it, let's grab Ursoc's Fury. This will give us more survivability and absorbs, which complements the healing that we're going to gain from Elun's Favored. We'll put 2 points into Vulnerable Flesh, which will give us access to the third Berserk talent, Unchecked Aggression. This is a slightly nerfed version of the Unchecked Aggression Shadowlands Conduit, but all bears are going to be happy with a 15% haste modifier on our major cooldown. With 4 points left, we will have some tough calls to make. I really hate missing out on Layered Mane and Reinforced Fur on the far right side of the tree, but we're trying to bolster our damage and healing for the Galactic Guardian talent. Before I choose these talents, I think most of these choices are subjective to the player, without the obvious simulations and balancing that Blizzard is going to end up doing. This is more of a meme build after all, but hey, who knows? If Blizzard balances the class as well as the content properly, we can see this become a reality. After the Wildfire talent seems to be pretty dope, but I do have a few questions about this, but I'm going to talk about those in a bit. With After the Wildfire talented, I want to optimize the rage generation as well as keep a few staples from previous expansions. Because of that, I think Blood Frenzy will be the choice here. It'll have a nice synergy with Earth Warden and Positive Outlook, and because of Circle of Life and Death, it will also have an increased tick rate, which will improve our procs of Galactic Guardian and the rage generation for After the Wildfire. Naturally, Rage of the Sleeper seems to be super sick, and it's another damage amplifier as well as a secondary major cooldown that bears have desperately needed for years now. I do also have some questions about this, which we'll address in a bit. With 1 point left, I'm extremely torn between Incarnation, the signature major cooldown of the Guardian Druid, which gives us the effects of all our Berserk talents, and, of course, between Convoke the Spirits, which can proc Moonfire, by the way. The problem with Incarnation is that it puts the bear in a position to prioritize Thrash for 30 seconds instead of Moonfire, which counters against the Galactic Guardian choice. Part of me thinks that Convokes the Spirits will be pretty awesome to have, but it's probably going to fall behind in damage and survivability. We're going to choose Incarnation for this tree. While we will prioritize Thrash, I think the damage will still proc multiple Moonfires and will probably look sick as fuck. Imagine a flurry of bleeding claws and moonbeams falling from the sky. I'm stoked. Quickly, let's talk about the base Druid tree. This is where I think the build falls apart slightly. We end up missing out on some pretty great utility and some more widely accepted Guardian Druid abilities like 1 Minute Roar, Typhoon, Renewal, Hibernate, etc. Without testing, it's hard to know what this is actually going to look like on live servers, but I can't wait to explore the beta. Hopefully. My goal with this build was to optimize our arcane damage and healing. So I wanted to snag a magic damage increase, Lakara's teachings for versatility, and Nature's Vigil. I doubt this is practical, but who cares? It's gonna be fun. Now, of course, let me reiterate that this is not a set talent tree or going to be the choice for most players. And even then, the talent tree might change. It looks really fun to me, and after spending way too much time calculating the possibilities of this tree, this is the build that I've settled on, and that I came up with and appeals most to me. If you have any recommendations or changes, please let me know in the comment section below, or join my Discord. I would love to chat about the possibilities of this build, because maybe I missed something. Okay, we got the fun out of the way, now the serious stuff. This is what I would imagine our Mythic Plus build is going to look like. That begs the question, what should we keep in mind? Well, great question. In the average dungeon, physical melee attacks make up about 70% of the damage the tank will take. This number can fluctuate pretty drastically, but it's honestly going to be hard to tell without knowing the damage taken profile of the upcoming Dragonflight dungeons. I'm going to base this off the premise that it will be exactly how it's always been, with an emphasis on mitigation rather than healing. We want to optimize our ability to mitigate, reflect, and absorb damage. Let's start with the base tree, and assume that we're going to be doing this at endgame content, aka level 70. We will automatically have access to Thrash and Frenzied Regeneration, so let's get our 8 points out of the way so we can figure this out and move on. So Swipe, Iron Fur, Improved Bark Skin ×2, Increased Armor and Physical Damage ×3, and then Improved Frenzied Regen. This will unlock the next section of the tree. No doubt that we will need a kick, so Skull Bash it is. Then Thick Hide, again minimizing the damage that we're going to take. Ursoc's Endurance seems to be extremely strong, but again, I don't know what small amount means in this phrasing. Either way, we're going to take it because we want access to talents on the left side of the section 3. Let's grab Soothe and Stampeding Roar. While not all dungeons will probably have enrage effects, as we might assume, Stampeding Roar will give us access to group movement, which is always going to be beneficial, whether it's Mythic Plus or rating. Now sitting at 14 points, we need to figure out 6 more points to spend to unlock the third section of the tree. At this point, we need to treat this as our affinity, which is a concept that we've been used to over the last few years. Rejuvenation will typically have more group use, but outside of Remove Corruption, there isn't much else in the resto section of this tree that's going to benefit us. I do have an issue with them taking away Remove Corruption and Soothe away from like the baseline kit of Guardian, but we'll forget about that for now. We're going to utilize the balance section to gain access to increased attack range and Typhoon as a form of CC. Once we hit Typhoon, we will have unlocked the third section of our base tree. Incapacitating Roar is a must. It offers an area of effect disruption to stop certain casts, and I'm really glad to see Well-Honed Instincts making it into this expansion. It was another Druid staple from Shadowlands, a very strong defensive for all specs. We will put 2 points into this. We have 8 more points to spend. I think it's best to put this into Lykara's Teachings. This will give us a flat 3% versatility while in bear form, which all tanks know is an overpowered stat. And then we can grab Renewal and Improved Stampeding Roar for that 1 minute cooldown. With 3 points left, we need to figure out the best way to spend them. There are a few flavor options at this point. If you wanted more mobility, Wild Charge and Tiger's Dash are still available in section 2 of the tree. Ursine Vigor is also a great option, and it was a really strong conduit that we saw very little use of in Shadowlands. And this is actually because it was a pretty strong option, but in Shadowlands, it just had better competitors. With 3 points, we could access Innervate, but I highly doubt this will be beneficial when it comes to Mythic Plus. Of course, I'm assuming it's not usable in bear form, but if it can be, this will probably change my opinion of the talent. Clearly a really strong raid option for Guardian Druid and Feral players. With Mythic Plus in mind, I think my last 3 points are going to go into Sunfire and then Ursol's Vortex. I have longed for the ability to access the Pseudo-Mass Grip by placing Vortex and then casting Typhoon. My last point will then be placed into Ursine's Vigor rank 1. This will help with the first few seconds of a pull. 15% armor is roughly 2 to 3 Iron Furs, and 15% health will reduce the likelihood of me flopping over on pull. Okay, with our base tree out of the way, let's talk about the Guardian Druid specialization tree. We will see similar choices from the Galactic Guardian build, but we will be avoiding the extra arcane damage for a little bit more sturdiness from physical attacks and a more emphasis on damage mitigation while trying to optimize our offensives. The tree is going to start very similar. Maul, Gore, Survival Instincts, Improved Bear Form, Brambles, Improved Mangle, Berserk Ravage, then Innate Resolve. We are going to want to have access to Positive Outlook and Earth Warden for general tankiness. This is often where a lot of the sturdiness comes from currently on the Guardian Druid. We will then also be grabbing improved survival instincts for the extra major damage reduction cooldown. Gore Fury? Gore Fur? Holy shit. Gory Fur, while not my favorite talent, will give us access to Layered Mane. Naturally, we will also take Tooth and Claw. 2 points into Vulnerable Flesh will then grant us access to the rest of the talents that we desire. We are going to grab both Berserk talents and Front of the Pack. This will give us access to Ursoc's Fury. Like I mentioned before, this is just too strong to pass up. It's also our largest counter to magic damage in the form of Absorption Shields. We then will choose Circle of Life and Death in order to access Incarnation. After this, we are left with 5 points. I would like to have access to Untamed Savagery or Rend and Tear talents. While I can't say which will be stronger, there are arguments for both. The damage amp on Untamed Savagery will give us more healing from Ursoc's Fury and more damage during Incarnation. But the flat 6% damage reduction as well as the 6% damage increase to the target that Rend and Tear offers may be more valuable and has a compounding effect with Earth Warden. Either way, we will be able to adjust these two accordingly to the type of content that we are in. With 3 points left, anybody could probably guess what my next play is going to be. After the Wildlife is an easy choice for group healing. Guardian of Elune just isn't that widely accepted as a meta choice since Iron Fur is stackable. It's really hard to argue that having 2 extra seconds for 1 sec of Iron Fur compared to group and self-healing is going to be better. Blood Frenzy will give us additional rage and of course even more so with Circle of Life and Death talent choice. Naturally, Rage of the Sleeper seems to be the play for Guardians. I'm assuming this is an ability we're going to gain and have the choice to use. Wowhead nor Mythic Trap actually gives us a cooldown for the ability. Either way, bears struggle with lacking additional cooldowns to survive heavy damage over a long period of time. Once again, this isn't a set build for Guardian Druid, but as a Guardian Druid main for 4 years in the Mythic Plus meta and pushing the top end of the leaderboard on Raider.io, this build makes the most sense to me. Obviously, we can't test this yet, and there are still a ton of things we are unclear of, which is definitely going to cause some skepticism among the community. For all we know, they could completely change this tree around. Anyways, let me know if you have any suggestions or questions about this build in particular. First and foremost, I'm not a huge fan of them removing or restricting access to certain abilities that Druids have had for years. Abilities like Soothe, Remove Corruption, Cyclone, Hibernate, etc. While you can access some of these if you want, you have to kind of throw away points or sacrifice some pretty powerful talents later in the tree. It may not be as huge of an issue as I'm making it out to be, but it always feels bad having abilities kind of stripped from you and then being offered back at a cost. Another gripe I have is that certain talents are locked behind poor choices. In the Guardian Druid tree specifically, we can see that Gore locking Brambles and the right side of the tree. While Gore is a staple of the Guardian Druid playstyle, the reward for using a Gore proc is just not impactful. Of course, I'm talking from a Mythic Plus standpoint, but 4 Rage is nothing, and more often it is a DPS increase not to hit Mangle even on Gore procs. Another example is Gory Fur, locking Layered Mane. Our Rage generation is typically fine, and in AoE scenarios, it's pretty easy to keep up multiple stacks of Iron Fur, and this goes against the AoE rotation of Bear. It just always feels like a wasted talent if you're pretty much hitting swipe. So this just feels like a wasted talent point. I've heard similar complaints from Restoration Druids. They have to take Omen of Clarity in order to have access to their external DR, Ironbark. Omen is cool, I guess, but it's nothing exceptional and doesn't save the rest of Druid much mana, nor are they banking on an Omen proc to heal. Also, I think Infected Wounds in the Guardian tree should still just be baseline. It's not practical to take, and it just feels like it's there to take up a slot. It's difficult to maintain this debuff on more than 3 targets without Incarnation, but even when we're in our Incarnation, rarely do we ever hit Mangle or Maul. Now, of course, rarely. Plus, typically when you're in Incarnation, you don't need things to be slowed because you're probably just face tanking the mobs anyways. There are just some abilities that feel like wasted space. There were a ton of cool minor Torghast powers that I think they could actually take advantage of instead of just using passives from our currently existing toolkit. Lakar's teaching in the base tree is a great example of this. Outside of these, I'm fairly pleased with the talent trees, and it's really going to come down to balancing and tuning on Blizzard's end. I'm hoping that the rest of the trees we haven't seen yet are just as good as this one. Now, last but not least, we do have some questions. I'm really interested in the Rage of the Sleeper talent choice in the far right corner of the Guardian Druid talent tree. I'm genuinely curious if it's a proc-based buff or an on-use ability. Also, if it is an on-use, what's the cooldown going to look like? I'd like to imagine it's going to be in the realm of 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. It would be really nice to have access to a shorter damage reduction cooldown that also acts as a damage amplifier, similar to things like Avenging Wrath or Avatar. I'm excited to see. I'm also extremely attached to the After the Wildfire talent choice. Each time the bear spends 200 range, you heal nearby allies for 3% of your max health. I'm really wondering if this is just another take on Ysera's gift, or if it's going to heal everyone within a certain yard radius. It would be extremely cool if bears could AoE heal their group because it would change the dynamic of the positioning in Raid and Mythic Plus. Also, there are a few modifiers earlier in the talent tree that reduce rage costs, and I'm wondering if it will still negatively or positively affect the talent choice. For example, Layered Main can proc a second Iron Fur. Will this talent count it as a 40 rage spend or 80? Also, Gory Fur reduces the cost of Iron Fur by 25% off of Mangle. Will this talent count it as 30 or as 40? There are several mechanics in-game that are already in existence that bypass reductions and count abilities at full value. If that's the case, this talent can be extremely strong and probably forced to proc every few seconds. Again, it all comes down to tuning, but once we can test it, we will know, and I'm praying that it's going to work as I think it might. Lastly, of course, like I mentioned earlier, can Innervate be used in bear form? If not, it'll be extremely disappointing. But I'm glad to see that they're allowing Feral and Guardian Druid players to have access to extra group healing and utility. It really sucked going into Shadowlands and seeing spec-specific abilities like Stampeding Roar being given to all Druid specs, while Feral and Guardian didn't get access to balance or resto abilities in their base toolkit, rendering them almost useless in high-end progression. All in all, I'm super stoked for Dragonflight, and I'm eagerly waiting the upcoming weeks for more talent tree announcements. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Feel free to join my Discord or catch me streaming on Twitch where we can continue this conversation in more detail. I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care.